Howdy, folks, and welcome to your storm chasing forecast show for Monday, June 8th. I'm Gabriel Harber, and I'm here once again with Cameron Nixon. How's it going, Cameron?
Good. How are you doing, Gabe?
I am super excited to celebrate the Sharpedo Risk Day that we find across the
Ooh.
high plains. If you want to show them that clever little tweet that I sent out earlier. So,
I see it. I see it. Are we
the
going in the jaws?
some people get the useful kind of pattern recognition, like you, who look at severe hail analogs and are able to make insane progress in the field to advance meteorology forward. Some people get
Yeah.
this kind of pattern recognition, so I
It's
apologize that you
really
have to
good
deal with
pattern
this.
recognition.
All
Funny.
right, so Cameron, we're of course using WeatherFront. Those of you who are envious because what you're looking at on your screens is freaking awesome and you don't have it yet, just go to weatherfront.com and you'll get all the information. The link for that is in the description below. So, Cameron, we've got the tiniest, just minute little risk area there, at least for tornadoes, up
Yes.
in northeast Colorado, southeast Wyoming, and I guess the panhandle of Nebraska. You seemed pretty excited about talking about today's risk. So, what are you seeing up there that's got you all up in arms?
Yes, I do. First and foremost, I am heavily biased. I love chasing in this region. And I'm even considering my potential first long distance solo chase. So we'll see how that turns out. But I really love chasing this area and the kind of stock standard ingredients for tornado potential in the high plains are potentially coming together. So, it resembles a lot of past events that this area has seen, pretty supercells and potential tornadoes. So I definitely want to chat about that.
One thing that stands out to me you just mentioned is that this might be your first ever solo chase where you're driving that sort of distance. And that
Yeah.
probably is strange for a lot of people to hear because there's such a pressure, I feel, in the storm chasing community nowadays that if you're 16 years old or older, you should just be taking whatever beat up piece of crap car it is that you have, just microdosing Adderall and flying as far away from home as
Yeah.
possible to catch whatever storms you can. And so I appreciate that you have a little bit of a more tempered approach. You're very selective about what you go out there and chase. And I think that's the cadence that you really need to be a storm chaser if you're in it for the long haul.
Absolutely. And I think my main thing here is chase with a buddy. Historically, 99.9% of the time, I'm chasing with friends. You could just accomplish so much more. You're less distracted. You can get closer without feeling like you're in danger or losing situational awareness. Whatever. I'm not going to belabor that, but I love chasing with buddies.
Yeah, but so hopefully, if we have some young folks that are listening, if you don't have anyone that can go out with you and it seems maybe like it's a little bit out of reach for a day trip, nothing wrong with just saying, you know what, gonna pass this one up and wait for something better.
Absolutely. And I might do the same.
All right, so the first question I have is about the moisture. I don't know if that's the first thing you wanted to talk about, but I saw something really interesting. It
Yeah.
was the moisture had this weird quality where it was folding in over itself, almost like a wave crashing down further south. And then a little bit later in the day, it seemed to actually start to reach up into this risk area. So I don't know if you want to
Yeah.
pull up the dew points and maybe share with me what it was that was going on there, but I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, let's actually go. I actually think doing our top down will help us get to that point
Okay.
as to why they're actually doing that. I think this might actually reveal something. So I think I'm going to answer your question in maybe a minute and a half. We'll start with our upper level flow. And you can see that later today, we have the remnants of that kind of shortwave trough that was down here in the southern plains. But behind it, we just have this beautiful, modest kind of southwesterly flow spreading most of the high plains. And this is just going to be climatologically favored to induce low pressure in the lee of the Rockies. And so we can show this and make sure we got the most current time. Yeah, we do. And as you can see, as we go later on in the day, you get this big low pressure center forming over kind of southwest Kansas and the panhandles, and then generally pressure lowering over the high plains. And so, what that is going to do, in answer to your question, then, is going to take all of these really rich low 70s dew points that we had yesterday here over Oklahoma. It was really soupy here, and it's going to pull them up around that low and then back into Colorado. And so this is just a classic setup for moisture funneling up into the high terrain. This is your classic upslope setup. And of course, you induce a stronger low right around Denver and you pull these winds up there even further. So I think kind of that's how we're going to get our moisture here.
So that's one of those combos right there where you got that low pressure slinging it around and then it just snakes its way into the target area a little bit later in the day.
Yes, exactly. And so we could see this as we go throughout the day. You could see wrap just draws that moisture up here. The one thing that we need to watch, and I'll go into this a little bit more in detail with our cams, is the rate at which this cold front or kind of cool front comes in. Because if we come in a little bit too quickly, it's going to shunt this progression of moisture further south, perhaps not into this fabled Palmer Divide area. But as it stands, most models are having some kind of finger of low to even mid 60s dew points up into Goodland into northeast Colorado, which to me is it's time to chase there.
So the moisture looks good, but we know that CAPE, which is the convective available potential energy, does not always equal 1 to 1 the moisture. So what are we looking at as far as instability in the target area?
Yes, exactly. And that is one of the several things that I actually really like that these, even the modest low to mid 60s dew points create quite a bit of cape from north or from central Kansas, even all the way up into northeast Colorado. So if you pluck a sounding, you could see generally why this is. And it's because our upper level temperatures are so cold. And looking at the sounding, we have a 66 dew point, which is impressively high for this area. And you have really steep mid to upper level lapse rates. And we're dealing with, what is this, over 8 degrees Celsius per kilometer all the way up here in this profile. And so you get some really meaty cape, especially in the mid and upper level zones of this SKU-T, that are going to be very good for robust convection and really strong updrafts. And so, one thing that I especially like about this is how dry our mid level profile is, too. So, this could really help yield some explosive and particularly photogenic convection and even supercells.
Now the CAPE looks great, but that Hodograph is not inspiring a ton of confidence for me just yet. Are we waiting on something else to potentially kick in that's going to actually send this into overdrive at some point?
Potentially, yes. And I will challenge that a little bit because this photograph, especially around initiation, right? This is only 21Z. You have really strong shear in these lowest levels. And that's a result of that strong upslope flow that you're seeing. These winds coming from the east, southeast, and then quickly switching back with our strong upper level flow. So, what you're noticing here, there is not a lot of SRH, right? There really isn't. But there is a lot of strong mid-level shear that can support some robust supercells. And our tornado threat could come later on if we induce some semblance of a low-level jet. So we could take a look at what this might look like. Let's pull up some 850 winds, or actually let's do some 700 winds because we are such high elevation. And let's do 700s. We'll see if there's a low-level jet response, and then we'll watch the photographs later on. And as we get later into the afternoon hours, you do see some semblance of some weak mid-level flow here. Maybe some low-level jet response, but seems to be pretty tame. So I don't think that these photographs are going to get overly curvy overnight, but probably just enough to maintain some good curvature. So if let me just throw up some 0 to 3 kilometer SRH right around 1Z, which again is still very light out at 1Z. We do have a little bit more curvature, nothing impressive, but definitely enough. If you look at climatology for this area, we did this kind of study with Chase Archive. This is all you need. We really didn't have that many robust chase cases, even tornado cases in Northeast Colorado that had really strong low level shear. So again, this is normal with perhaps more cape than usual.
How would you feel about calling Hodographs with lots of good low level curvature voluptuous?
Ooh, gotta watch my wording there, but potentially.
Fair enough, fair enough. I won't put you into a corner with that one. One thing I do want to ask you about, though, because I thought it was super interesting, is you use the 700 millibar winds instead of the 850 millibar winds. If you could go back
Yes,
to
I
that
probably
maybe and just share a little bit about why it is that's where you're finding your low level winds or low level jet
definitely should
winds.
have. Yeah, I should have expounded upon that. So if you look at, let's maybe do 950 or 925 for a quick test. And I think it depends on the interpolation and how they deal with these lowest levels. But 925 millibars, that pressure level, is actually below the ground for much of the high plains. And so this is, I think, why you get this really strong low-level jet signal out here, but really not much out here. And I don't actually know what this is. This seems maybe they're just using the surface wind instead, but we can throw it up to 850. You could see this kind of expands. But then I think we reach, I think this right around here is a level at which 850 intersects the ground. So again, we don't have much winds below that. So now we go up to 700, and then I think we're just a little bit too, I think our level jet might be just shallow enough today that we really don't get much of a signal at 700 millibars and above. So I think we're dealing with both the low level jet is a feature at 850 below, and it's not, it doesn't usually actually come up to Northeast Colorado.
And I think this is just such a wonderful example of how you can't just allow yourself to become sclerotic in your thinking. This is the low level jet winds. This is all I ever need to look at, and then just leave it at that. You really have to consider everything for the setup in unison. It has to be a holistic analysis, and sometimes that may mean you're looking at slightly different parameters than you would normally do.
Yeah, and different parameters for different areas, right? It really, that Northeast Colorado corridor needs a lot less to achieve the same result. Less 850 flow and less dew points.
All right, you want to go over to the cams now?
Yeah, let's do some cams.
A lot of people don't realize those are actually named after you.
They are. Cams are in J. Nixon. Yeah, most of them are showing some semblance of discrete supercell activity. So I'll roll out potentially early midday convection up here in Northwest Kansas. This might be a theme, so we're going to be watching this closely. But then some more convection forming off the high terrain, maybe even the Denver Atlantic Vorticity Zone, Denver Convergence Vorticity Zone, sorry. And we get some supercells rolling off the high terrain, one up here in kind of the Scottsbluff area, and another one here ripping down I-70, which is just a classic evolution, Lyman to Goodland. So definitely something that I like to see that's, again, just classic for that area. RFS2, you see that early day here up in Kansas. Perhaps that cold front gets a little bit giddy later on. And then we see some supercells rolling off into Lamar, Ulysses, Kansas, and then you again have that kind of I-70 ripper in the RFS. You can look at V2, similar story. Supercells scattered from Chugwater up here all the way down to I-70, even into Kansas. Yeah, so pretty much Groundhog Day, same boat, all pretty much giving you that supercell action in kind of this general vicinity. Would not be surprised if SBC ultimately pulls down that 2% right around that I-70 corridor. But I also think large hail could be a primary threat. If we looked at some of those SKUTs earlier with that massive amount of cape and those really steep lapse rates, would not be surprised if we get giant hail, 4 inches and greater with some of these supercells. I really think if we get those dews up there that are advertised and they aren't stunted by that crashing cold front, I think this is a significant severe weather area. And yeah, I'll pretty much leave it at this. Most cams are giving the same advice here. Go here, have fun, take good photos.
That early day convection, would it be possible to see any sort of tornadic activity with that, or is it mostly going to be just winds, hail, that sort of stuff?
I'm kind of doubting it because I think the mode is probably going to be thwarted by kind of the outflow boundary or front that they're riding on. I'm thinking most of this is just kind of going to be forced, which is not super conducive for surface-based storms. We could, though, just check out some low-level cape and see how that evolves throughout the day, because you might have just enough earlier on that you can maybe support some rotating updrafts within that line. And so if you pluck a sounding somewhere northwest of, say, Salina here, we really, yeah, this is why we're getting that convection, right? Really soupy air mass out here. Lots of low-level cape, minimal sin here. Shear is even not that bad too. So that this could be some sig severe wind producing convection out here with maybe a tornado or two.
All right, Cameron, I told you I had a bonus question before we bounce on out of here.
Yes, please.
The day 2 outlook, at least, I'm not sure if that will carry over to the day 1 that's about to be released here very shortly. The day 2 outlook said that there's the potential for maybe a tornado in Tennessee. Have you taken a look at that area at all? Because there is that trough that's coming through. You were talking about it a little bit earlier.
Yeah, we can do, let's just see if our surface analysis checks out, our surface pattern. Looks like we have broad southerly, southwesterly low-level flow. We go up here, and you can see that short wave that gave Missouri its tornado yesterday. So that's probably what they're referencing, this little glancing blow by this short wave. Um, Throw up some, assuming they're going to have a lot. We can pluck a couple soundings there. Oh yeah, look at that. Ew. I can taste the dew points. Oh yeah. Yep. Classic tropical sounding with our really huge low-level cape here. We got almost 300 surface-based 3 cape here, even with our really weak lapse rates. Shear might need some work. We could throw up just deep layer shear to see if we can get any pockets of stronger shear aloft. And it doesn't look like at least the wrap is affording us much. Can look at the NAM nests and see if it's a little bit more bullish. Maybe has some kind of convectively induced MCV or something over here. But I can see why they're eyeing it for sure. Just doesn't seem overly synoptically evident.
Remember to check out those links in the description below, and then watch another video.